If you've heard about the proposed $100,000 H-1B petition fee, yeah, it's real. And for international students, early career pros, and startups, it could change everything. But today, we're flipping the script. We're joined live by one of the top minds in immigration strategy, Liz Profumo, founding attorney at Global Talent Immigration Law Group. And she's here to break down a powerful alternative to the H-1B, the O-1 visa, and how you might qualify. Liz will walk through the O-1 criteria, explain where you can find strong evidence, and give you a clearer, smarter path forward. Got questions? Drop them in the chat. We're answering live. Stick around. It's time to take control of your future.
Thank you for joining us today. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot of questions about the recent changes that have been announced to the H-1B program, as well as whether there are alternatives that employers and tech workers can consider. So we won't know the final rules of the H-1B until the time draws nearer. Things are changing quickly. They're changing frequently. There are court challenges. There are 2 cases challenging the new H-1B rules that I'm sure will result in some kind of enjoinment or injunctions followed by appeals. So things will be changing. I mean, the most recent update is that the exorbitant $100,000 per worker per year fee will not apply to people who are changing their status to H-1B within the US. So that's a great news for anyone who is currently on OPT and planning to apply to change status to the H-1B. But today's talk, we're actually not really planning to focus on the nuances of the H-1B rule, but really we're talking about how to avoid the H-1B altogether. Okay, because historically, big companies use H-1Bs out of habit. A long time ago, H-1Bs were much easier to get approved than O-1s or other types of visas. But things have changed over the years. So attorneys who do a lot of H-1Bs will tell you it's not nearly as easy to get them approved anymore as it used to be. And there's also a lot of huge drawbacks to the H-1B that we probably all know about. The biggest one being the lottery system, or I guess to be more specific, the very limited number of H-1B visas that are available each year. Every year the government issues 85,000 H-1Bs, but there are anywhere from 250,000 to 750,000 people vying for these. So your odds are never great at, getting an H-1B under the cap. Then there's the timing restrictions, right? So H-1Bs have to be registered by their company in the month of March. This is for the past couple years. If you're one of the few that is lucky to be selected, or one of the 85,000, I guess, that are lucky to be selected, your company has to file your petition in this specific 3-month window. And then if you're approved, you can start working October 1st. So, if an employer wants to hire someone, but they don't meet them until after that year's lottery, they're going to have to wait, a year and a half to potentially employ them under the next fiscal year H-1B. Employers are required to stick very closely to the terms of the employment that are submitted on the labor condition applications in an H-1B. So when you apply for an H-1B, an employer has to state exactly what your wage will be, your duties, your job title, your address where you'll be working. And if any of those things change, they can be subject to penalties. And most significantly, probably for most employers, they have to pay all the fees associated with an H-1B. So when we're talking about alternatives, on the other hand, with the O-1, virtually none of those factors come into play. There's no limit on the number of O-1s that can be issued each year. It's not the luck of the draw with the O-1. It's based on, the worker actually showing that they have talent, and recognition in their field. So employers can submit O-1s all year round, and O-1s can start working, any time of the year. Um, there's no specific minimum salary requirement for the O-1, so it gives employers some flexibility. If some of the terms of employment change, the employer's not going to be penalized. Um, let's see, and probably most attractive for employers, they're not legally required to pay the fees for the O-1 like they are for the H-1B. So there's a lot of benefits to the O-1. So then, if it's so great, why doesn't every company, why doesn't everyone get O-1s? So, it's because you have to qualify for it, or the employee has to qualify for it. So it's for professionals who can show they have extraordinary ability in the field of business or science, so you do have to demonstrate some success or recognition in your field. Okay, so I talked to a lot of people who are on H-1B, and they're saying, look, I'm just a coder, I'm just an engineer, I'm just a software developer. I do my job, I'm good at it, but I don't stand out and I'm not extraordinary. So, and that's what I want to talk about today, because, you probably are, and we just need to talk about how to prove it to USCIS. Okay, so in order for an employee to be qualified for an O-1, they have to demonstrate that they meet at least 3 out of 8 criteria that USCIS has outlined. Okay, and so one of the criteria is, have you performed a lead or critical role for distinguished organizations? So if you have a company willing to sponsor you for H-1B and put that time and investment into you, chances are they think you're important. And so we're likely to already have 1 out of 3 criteria before we even start thinking about it. Okay. So then the question becomes, how can we potentially qualify for more criteria? And this is one I get a lot. So you can, so, okay, sorry. So out of the 7 additional criteria, the things that I expect to see, or that I often see from engineers and people who have a background in software development, first of all, do you have the opportunity to judge, to judge any competitions in your field? This could be hackathons, it could be a robotics competition, it could be anything related to your specific field. I understand the tech world is vast and people have very different expertise, areas of expertise. Is there any opportunity to peer review any papers before they're published? This could be, it could be in an academic journal, it could be in a trade publication that's not as formally academic. Is there any opportunity to potentially write a paper, in your area of expertise and get it published in any tech-related publications, or any publications that, are in your specific field? Are you an expert in something that could make an interesting topic for an article in a tech publication? If you can be interviewed or profiled about your work and your background, that's, all these things can be helpful. Are you on any patents? Or if you're not, can you be named on any patents? Are there any organizations you can join that are really difficult to get into? Or maybe you're a member of an organization already, and it wasn't that hard to get into, but maybe there is a board or a subcommittee within that organization that will only allow the top members to join that subgroup. So if the answer to any of these is, if you can say that you've done any of these things, these are all things that will help you qualify for an O-1. Are there any competitions you might be able to enter with the hope of winning an award or becoming a finalist? My point is there are steps you can take and there are things you can do. And even without the new $100,000 rule for the H-1B, the chances of being selected in the lottery have always been low. Maybe some of you know they're proposing changes to the lottery for next year that will strongly favor people that are being offered a higher wage. And so anyone that is coming in at an entry-level wage is going to be disadvantaged if this version of the lottery ends up moving forward. But these are steps you can take to give yourself the best chance at qualifying for the O1. We've helped a lot of tech professionals over the years develop their O1 cases and really feel that anyone who's considering the H-1B should be working towards an O1 as well. And I think that's my message for today. But I wanted to, if anyone is watching that has any questions about this, I'm happy to answer them if I can. If you see this and you do want to talk to me or someone on my team about an O1 visa or questions about how the new rules for the H-1B might impact you, feel free to contact us.
And that's a wrap on today's live session. Overcoming the $100,000 H-1B roadblock, the solution. A big thank you to everyone who tuned in, and of course, to Liz Profumo for her insight, clarity, and strategy. If today's session opened your eyes to new options, especially the O1 visa path, don't stop here. Your next step could change everything. Visit globaltalentlaw.com and book your free consultation today. Get personal guidance, expert support, and a strategy built for you. Until next time, stay informed, stay focused, and take control of your immigration future.